City of Hudson Planning Commission meeting to order for Thursday, July 25th. First, before we consider the meeting minutes, I'd just like to welcome back Pat Casanova to our committee. You're a veteran. It's nice to have you back. So can we have a motion or not to consider the meeting minutes of April 25th, 2013?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on. The petition for annexation of 3.88 acres at 483 Stage Line Road, Town of Hudson, Alan Griesbach and Richard Stout. Denny?
The petition for annexation is, as Mary mentioned, 3.8 acres. This parcel is located on the south side of the stage line. Basically, is an area that kind of a pie-shaped parcel. The city of Hudson's located on the north side and on the south side of this, so it basically fills in that area. The City of Hudson Comprehensive Plan designates the parcel as multiple family residential. The purpose of the annexation would be to develop the parcel potentially for multiple family residential or a community-based residential facility such as a senior care, dementia, Alzheimer's type facility. Again, currently the property zone is one family residential. Upon annexation, be brought, if the Common Council would choose to annex the property, it'd be brought in a single family and then go through the zoning process. Any other development such as a community-based residential facility would require a conditional use permit to be approved. We're working on the annexation agreement. My intent tonight is basically introduce this issue, bring it back on the next Plan Commission meeting scheduled for Thursday, August 8th. Hopefully a recommendation by Plan Commission can be made, considered at that time, with that then being entertained by the Common Council on August 15th. I've been holding off submitting the development agreement to the developer until we had this initial meeting, so if any issues that the Plan Commission may have, I could incorporate or at least denote those issues to the developer as we send that out. So it's a fairly straightforward annexation. That parcel does benefit from the improvements to Stage Line Road back in early 2000, and there'd be special assessments of about $15,000 for those roadway improvements. Again, if it's brought in the city, it is a one-family residential. Typically, we would require that to be hooked up to sanitary sewer and water as reasonably possible. What I've identified is if they want to go through the process of the rezoning and so forth, we'd see how that would work out. But I basically had given them a timeline of July 1st, 2014. Your process of going through the rezoning and possible development plans should be done by then if they really want to proceed. If not, then they have a drop-dead date upon which to hook up to the city of Hudson or remove the home. So from that perspective, those are some of the things that we'd be addressing also. So the annexation agreement addresses zoning, subdivision, development considerations, any impact fees that would be owed to the city, any special assessments, any other considerations, identifying building permit, open space fee, library impact fees, those types of considerations. So I guess the issue for us tonight, if there are any issues that you've thought about, knowing this request is coming before us, identify those so we can discuss those with the developer within the next 2 weeks and then bring it back for the August 8th Plan Commission meeting.
I have a question. All this appears to be abutting single-family residences. We don't know a thing yet about other than they plan on multiple family. Is there any chance of a rear entrance or another entrance to that property? Or is that a ridiculous question based on the map that I'm looking at? But you have to ask the question, so.
Well, I mean, by rear entrance, you mean off of
Stage Line.
Well,
yes.
Stage Line, I mean, there could be a secondary access. Most likely, if a development plan for multiple family development such as what might be proposed, typically we would require secondary access for fire access, not just a single access. So where that would be dedicated and limited only to fire access, or where it would be some kind of a loop roadway within the parcel, would be something we would examine, but that's something we certainly would look at development plan review.
Well, the intent of my question was to have the entrance to the property, noting it's off stage line either. I mean, I'm ahead of myself and I realize that, but right in, right out, something so there's no impact, nothing that would cause slowing down, if you will, in that area along the road. I just feel that the traffic over time on stage line is going to increase, and we just have to keep that in the back of our mind.
The developer, as far as annexation, obviously the first step, we would consider annexation. Would a public hearing ever come into play?
Public hearing is not required, however, ordinance is required to be approved by the Common Council, and that would take 4 out of 6 votes for approval.
And then if they choose to rezone it to multifamily, then is there a public hearing that comes into play?
Absolutely. By state statute, public hearings required.
Okay.
And it does meet the overall city plan. You maybe said this and I didn't hear it, but it fits into our current comprehensive plan.
Our comprehensive plan designates the property as medium-density, multi-family residential.
I knew you maybe said it.
Well, you know, my big nitpick on Stage Line Road is anytime we're doing any development there, I want to see a sidewalk added to it, so that'll be a nitpick of mine in the future. You can pass that on to him or her, because I'd like to see that eventually be a completed sidewalk, so. Gordon, would you like to speak?
Gordon Kennard, 36 Eagles Nest Circle, Hudson. I may be misunderstood or misheard or didn't hear correctly what Denny said. Do the neighbors that have single-family homes along Stage Line there on that south side, are they aware of this? Did you address that?
We did not send them particular notices, but, you know, we certainly can send them one for the next meeting, absolutely.
I guess I'd encourage that their neighbors, if that makes sense, to find out how they feel about this.
Thank you, Gordon. Anybody else have any input? So do you need anything?
I don't need any specific action tonight. Again, my intent would be to bring it back for the August 8th Plan Commission meeting.
Okay, and
Let's do that.
postpone it.
Postpone it till then,
You want a motion postpone, or is
either way.
I move to postpone till August 8th.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Next on our agenda is the draft regulations for microbrewery, winery, distillery operations in commercial and industrial districts. Denny?
In April, we had a discussion on, there's been requests for potential development for breweries, brew pubs, wineries, and distilleries. And since our last meeting that we discussed this issue in April, I have had an inquiry about a distillery in downtown Hudson. I've also had an inquiry about a brew pub in downtown Hudson, along with the winery operation that also Mr. Naggert was here to discuss at the last meeting. I sent out 2 drafts of regulations. One of them basically and I guess the biggest issue for me is, do we allow these types of, can we regulate these types of operations to allow them in the commercial districts? And I think the answer is probably yes, but we want to be careful how we do that. The way I submitted the draft, and again, this is subject to any and all changes, or, you know, if Plan Commission doesn't feel comfortable about making a recommendation to change certainly that's okay also. But basically, in the one draft, I set it up as having, two types of operations. One, which basically is, could be in the downtown area, which would be ancillary, where this winery, distillery would be ancillary to a restaurant. So the restaurant has to be the primary use, and that other type could be ancillary to it. The other type is basically a production, which we most likely limit to our industrial areas. And, anything in the commercial areas would require a conditional use permit. Anything in the industrial areas would require a certificate of compliance. Certificate of compliance does not require a public hearing. A conditional use permit does require a public hearing. Again, limiting, we talked about whether limiting volume or not, production volume. I've taken that out. I just think that'd be very difficult to regulate. We did talk about the maximum production area in the central business district or the tasting room area if it's not ancillary to a restaurant. So from that perspective, then also we set some guidelines on conditional use permits. One of the issues, primary issues I have is crushing fermentation operations. How's that fit into our wastewater treatment plant discharges to our wastewater treatment plant? We want to make sure those are addressed before any permits are issued. The second draft is an alternate draft, and I've just tried to really simplify this ordinance as much as I possibly can, and said, we're not going to tie it to ancillary use in the commercial areas, but it would require a conditional use permit, but it also would have production area and tasting room limitations. So that in a nutshell. I don't know if everybody had an opportunity to review the drafts or not. I guess I'm not looking for a decision tonight. I sent out drafts to representatives that's shown interest in this, told them we were going to discuss this tonight. I would not bring it back until August 22nd, I believe, which is our second meeting, and to give them an opportunity to respond to any conversations that we have at the Planning Commission tonight, or have a chance to meet with me and discuss the pros and cons of the draft. But it would be my intention to bring back hopefully a final draft on August 22nd for discussion by the Planning Commission and potential recommendation to the Common Council. If that would take place, then the Common Council would set up public hearings. It'd be a notice. The public would be invited to comment in regards to any potential amendments to the zoning code. So at this point, I guess, married this conversation by the Planning Commission members. We do have also members of some of the interest
Okay.
that expressed in doing your wineries, distilleries, or breweries, or brew pubs in the audience to give them an opportunity to discuss any of their concerns or issues tonight also.
Okay, well, why don't we work off the audience first and see if they address what we're thinking or not, and then move from there. If you could just state your name and your address, please.
Absolutely. My name is Mateo Negret. My address is 2646 133rd Street West in Rosemount, Minnesota. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the City Hudson Planning Commission. My father, Vincent, could not be here with us today. But that being said, we've looked over the new draft regulations over these sorts of businesses. We like the new one. We like how you simplified the different classification systems between distillery, winery, and brewery. We also thought the certificate of compliance standards and the conditional use permits were very fair. They pretty much keep both of our interests in mind so that our material and traffic don't get in the way of the public moving through. At the same time, we're able to operate, exactly what we're looking to do here under those conditions. The one thing that did stand out in the back of our minds were the limits on the types of food services. On the new draft, the wording states breweries, distilleries, and wineries located in the industrial zoning district will be allowed limited food service on site. Food service is not to include restaurant or retail food service, but may include food provided at no cost by the brewery, distillery, winery. And I understand where possibly the confusion of that arose. Back when we were originally working on our business plan, our idea for food was more geared towards catering and offering some sort of catering at no cost. Now that we've progressed through the business plan, it seems like a better option for us would be to have a third-party administrator come in and host all of our food offerings. do everything from staffing to running the kitchen to getting the licenses, and there's several companies that will assist us with that. But that being said, with the new draft, that would not be a possibility because of this limitation on restaurants or retail food services, particularly being only able to provide food at no cost. So that would be our suggestion for this sort of legislation, would be to open up those channels of having that food offering. In our experiences dealing with this sort of operations, it's very important for people when they come down to sit down and they're drinking a fine wine. They're also expecting to be able to eat a fine meal along with it, not just like a cold cut sandwich or something, but a nicely prepared meal to accompany their wine. And that keeps people coming to the business and staying there for longer, purchasing more things. So it's beneficial to the business. If there are issues and how this, food service might be a complication, I'd like to hear those, and we'd like to, clarify just how exactly the food offerings would take place. That's all.
I think, Mateo, what I was trying to get at was in the industrial districts, not the downtown or the commercial area,
Oh, the
but
business
in
district,
the
okay.
industrial areas, be more of a production facility
Okay.
where a restaurant may not be as significant to have as it may be in the downtown area where you're trying to get both the production and the hospitality aspect of it. Not that hospitality is not important in the ones that may be in industrial areas, but the total food service may be less important. So that's where I was trying to head toward. That was my objective. However, certainly we're open to discussing the pros and cons.
Okay, and that of course would be our objective too. Food sales will only be ancillary to wine production, and it's pretty hard to find margin profits in food anyway. So we'd just be offering more of a complementary service to our wine. But yeah, for that, if it's limited just to the industrial business district and not the central business district, and that's the way it goes down in the draft, we are absolutely fine with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Step up to the podium, please. Name and address.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pat Johnson. I'm with River's Edge Distillery, and my address is 2418 96th Avenue North in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. So I'm actually interested in opening up a new business here in downtown. Michael Murphy here from Pudge's Saloon is actually here alongside me as he owns the land that we've been talking about building on. And I think that all the points that he brought up are excellent notes. And I don't really have much prepared by way of formal production. I really wanted to introduce myself primarily and just say that reading what I'm seeing here, I think everything in here is completely reasonable. We do not intend on having any food production on site. In fact, something that we had planned on doing was inviting some of the Twin Cities food trucks to come out, park up alongside, let people buy food there, and then come inside and eat it while they're having a drink in the tasting room.
No, thank you very much.
No?
No, thank you very much. I'm sorry, my opinion, but
You don't want that?
no.
Okay.
I don't think our restaurants want it.
All right. Well, I mean, it would be right in downtown, so that would be something that, again, it'd be completely within the scope to change that. Everything is up for change at this point, so we're not married to any ideas. A couple of things that I did want to just kind of point out, being that food is not a concern for us, so changing type A, type B is not really something that we're going to be concerned with. But the limitations on the size of the production facility, that was one question where there was the 3,000 square foot for a production facility and then 4,000 square foot for the tasting room. That would be fine for now. However, in the event that we are hopefully successful and we do need to scale up that size, what our business plan is actually taken into account right now is that we would open up a second location, hopefully within the industrial part of town, so it wouldn't necessarily be within downtown. And that would be production. Production would be the primary focus there. It wouldn't necessarily be for public visitation. So it would be outside of this. It would still be a production facility and therefore be within the scope of this. So I would not want to necessarily be limited down the road in case, we're a victim of our own success to have to move into another town. We'd like to keep everything close by, but not necessarily under the same roof. So
I guess commenting in that regard, if you're in the industrial district, the production area limitations does not apply.
Okay.
Okay. We'd be looking. What I'm trying to do with these regulations is to tailor them to allow these types of facilities to exist within the context of the downtown area. One, can they complement the hospitality industry of the downtown area? Can they fit within the context? And our concern expressed at the last Plan Commission meeting, this was discussed, is may these areas or production facilities get too large where they cannot fit into the context of the downtown area. So taking the limitations of size, tasting room, and production out of the regulations for the industrial areas, that incent, if you want to go to a larger facility, to be in those districts. But if you want to be in a downtown, my draft, or at least my intent, after conversations with the Planning Commission last time, is to try to get these to fit within the downtown area. And I think we have to have some kind of area limitation to be able to do that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's our starting point. So
I don't think you're wrong.
I want to ask the question while you're standing here for clarification for all of us. If you had a combined production area and tasting room of 7,000 square feet, how many parking spots would be needed?
well,
Under that pretense. I mean, the subject's gonna come up sooner or later. You might as well hear it right now.
yeah, I mean, downtown area, it's one for every 3 seats that'd be provided. So
3 seats.
yeah.
I missed, are you planning on opening it, or hoping to open a distillery or a brewery?
A distillery.
Distillery.
Okay. So you would have people in there tasting?
Yep. So how the facility would work, really there would be 3 primary sections within the building. First would be kind of a storage. We actually would have to age barrels
Right.
when you're making whiskey. Goes whiskey and rums when you're making any sort of an aged liquor. Once you're done distilling it, you put it into a barrel, let it sit for a few years, and it ages, and then you bottle it. Then beyond that, there would be the primary production facility, and that would be where the actual still itself and the fermentation tanks would sit. That is variable in terms of size. Right now, we haven't determined the final size on anything yet, but that would be where we would actually be taking. Part of this is that everything is sourced locally. Everything is sourced from local farmers and local mills. So we would be taking in the various sugar beets and corn and wheat and rye and using that to make our mash, which is the ferment. And then from there, that would run through the still, which would then create what would essentially be the White Lightning, the actual pre-aged whiskey, or we would also be making rum and gin. So that would all be done, the mashing and the distilling would be done within the distilling facility. The third part of it would actually be the tasting room, and that would probably be subdivided into a second location for on-site retail sales. And that's, we're just kind of following what the law in the state has allowed for you to sell on-site. So we would not be selling anything to necessarily compete with any of the bars in the area, because we would only be selling our own spirits that were made on-site, and those would only be mixed with non-alcoholic beverages that we could buy at a local grocery store. So that would it wouldn't necessarily be a bar per se. The tasting room is part of the tour process. So people can come in, take a tour through the facilities, see how the production is made, have a tasting of what we've actually made there. If they'd like, they can buy a cocktail or they can buy a bottle on the way out. It would really be made for more of a short-term visit, so that it would kind of complement the walking flow of people coming in and out of downtown.
So are you actually gonna have people sitting in there, or just?
They could sit there and stay for a little while, but it wouldn't be like a 2 a.m. bar or anything like that. It would be intended for them to have a drink or two after a tour, but and then they'd be able to come in and actually, bring some food from other restaurants downtown in if they'd like to. There will be a sitting section. It will have a bar, so to speak, but it will not be anything that we'd want to be open late. It'd be closed down early at night, and only really open on weekends, because the primary income stream is coming from the production itself.
Okay.
So that's kind of a side option, just to really fit in closer with the community.
Kevin?
Just for clarification, so you have your success that you were talking about, and you open a second facility out in the industrial park that would be a distillery.
Sure.
Primarily. Is there anything that prevents them from bringing product from that distillery to this location downtown and selling it?
Well, I'm assuming it'd be required to have a liquor license, but I guess the question is, are distilleries regulated by the state similar to breweries where they can have a second off-site tasting room?
Sure, the way that the regulations work are actually closer governed by the federal government. The state doesn't get too close into it because federal regulations are so stiff. So how that works is that you essentially are licensed as a business to produce and distribute the various distilled beverages that you're creating. So that being said, if you are under the same, and you can even have multiple bonded locations outside. So say, for example, I had 5,000 barrels of whiskey that have to age for 4 years. I may not necessarily have space for that, and somewhere around here wouldn't. I could contact a local warehouse and bond the space as long as it had the locks and other requirements for the bonded storage of liquor, then it would fall under that. So the multiple locations would not necessarily affect how the state or federal laws govern that, but I think just kind of to address your point, if we are making, say for example, this facility in downtown were to, and we were to have to expand, we would probably go to just making, for example, rum on the still down here and making maybe whiskey and gin and any other spirits at another location. Because they're under the same business license in terms of the distillery license through the federal government, then they are essentially one location in the eyes of the federal law, just because it's under one business ID.
Okay.
But we would want to bring that down into downtown, because if it's being made up there, we'd still want the tasting room to have that as an option.
Right, yeah.
But we're not talking large volume there.
My question, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mike, but as a tavern owner in town, putting your other hat on, do you feel that these establishments in any way are conflicting businesses with you already being in the hospitality business? Are they additive to what's going on downtown?
Well, I think they're an additive.
Yeah.
I don't feel it'd be anybody.
Mike, please go up to the lectern so you, thank you.
Michael Murphy, owner of Pudge's downtown. I think this is a great idea. I think it's going to be a tourist attraction first. That's why mainly they have these tasting rooms and have tours. And I think it'll be great for the downtown area. People will be coming into town to take tours of this place, and they'll be patronizing all the restaurants and bars. Because usually if you go to a tasting someplace, it's, you know, just a taste, and you might buy one there, but you're probably going to go to dinner afterwards. So I just think it'd be a great addition to the downtown.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak on the specific issue, or, no?
Any other questions for me while I'm here?
I do have one. I mean, you're raising our feathers a little bit on your food issue when you said truck it in.
Changed my mind on that already.
I'm sorry.
Well,
You know what? It's better that I know now, because
no, I know
mean,
that.
I've got
That's why
investors that I'm
that's
discussing
why I
with.
brought it up, was just,
Absolutely.
you know, not to be rude, but
No, hey, honesty is the best policy, right?
I mean, I
think we
understand
like
what
this
you're
ap-
trying to do, but I mean, we don't approve of the method, so it has to be done. Otherwise, if you want to pursue that, let me just leave it with you that
There's
way.
some great pizza places here in town. I mean, I've been through everywhere in downtown. I love the food, and I mean, anything that gets people to come into downtown and to buy more stuff, I think is really the key. Let them enjoy the town. I think that this would definitely be a draw to downtown. I think it'd be a great way to, I mean, I would even make some sort of a Hudson spirit. I mean, that's the beauty of when you own a still, you can kind of make whatever you want. It's a matter of designing a label. So, so I mean, there could do something where we would be able to work with downtown. We intend to have a very large presence with nonprofits, working with the community. I know that actually 45th Parallel Spirits, which is another distillery over in New Richmond, they have been very successful, and they're involved very deeply with the community. They're involved in every school initiative, everything else that goes on. So I mean, that would be something I think would really complement not only the downtown experience and the tourist side of the city of Hudson, but also within the community itself, and making everything around here more fun.
Thank you.
Pat, just as far as discharge to the wastewater treatment plant in your existing facilities, do you have any kind of a pre-treatment that has to be considered, or?
I've spoken with distillery owners in 3 other cities, and they've all actually been able to discharge into the city system. And the reason is that because what the discharge, you're actually, when you finish distilling it, so you extract all the alcohol from your wash within the distilling process. When it's done, you've essentially got kind of a gray water, but it's very, very liquid. So it's actually a lighter viscosity than normal household waste. So it's essentially water that goes in, and the temperature that is released into the system keeps it thin, and so it dilutes the second it actually hits the city system. I haven't heard any zoning boards come up with an issue there, but it's something I'd be glad to discuss with whoever's in charge of the sewage system, and we can go into more details about that anytime you like. I realize it's a concern. I want to make sure that.
What we're proposing is where the facility, anywhere within Hudson, one of the conditions before approval would be meeting with our wastewater treatment plant operator, making sure that, where it's limitation or phasing discharges, whatever's required to make sure that we don't get too much content at one time. It's not so much we want to overregulate as much as try to control the flow to wastewater treatment plants. And then I guess my other question, if I may, in regards to your sources of byproduct, and you have the waste. We're in a downtown area where we basically will need that to be stored indoors. Is that is that an issue, or
In terms of the barrels?
Well, not the barrels. I'm talking about the waste from the mash. I mean, if you're bringing in sugar beets or whatever, what happens with that byproduct?
How that process works is that there's obviously a number of different variables in there, whether you're milling it off-site and bringing in milled corn or milled sugar beets, or whether you're milling it on-site. That all being said, how that works is that we're making a liquid out of everything, because a liquid is what you add the yeast to, and that's what makes the alcohol. We want to extract all the alcohol from it, and at the end have essentially anything that's going to be solid, we're going to be giving to local farms as feed. So anything solid is not going to be stored on site, it's not going to be discharged into the sewer. It's something we're going to give back to farms. There's no cost on that. It's essentially putting it into a truck and bringing it over there.
Yeah, but you have to store it until somebody comes to pick it up, correct?
Sure, but we can store it on site in 500-gallon containers and throw those on a truck.
Okay.
In your building or outside of the building?
Oh, in the building, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, I just want to say thanks again for everybody letting me talk tonight. And if anybody has any other questions, I'll be glad to provide my contact information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else wish to speak on this subject matter at this time? Nope. Going once? No? Anything from the commission? Any more questions? So I think just a clarification of the industrial versus downtown area as far as food offerings in the verbiage would be, a good thing.
I'll still try to maybe provide two different drafts so you have a choice.
Yeah, I prefer the main one over the alternate though.
Yeah. So so we still have, potentially generate. But if you have comments, again, I'm not going to bring this issue back till August 22nd. But if the parties have shown interest, have comments, concerns, I certainly want to hear those. Any plan commission members have questions, concerns before. Now I think I provided, here are the state alcohol beverage regulations. If you didn't get those, you're welcome to take them. Also tonight, I gave you the last draft of the state regulations on breweries, basically distilleries, and then wineries, so you have that also. But one of the things probably between now and August 22nd is myself discussing these issues with the city attorney. I anticipate she may want to go back, take some of the definitions within the state statutes, incorporate into this, so we have a consistent, we try to get as consistent between what's regulated by the state statute and what we may consider regulating. So the draft certainly is going to change a little bit, but my intentions are to bring it back August 22nd.
Okay, so do we need a motion to postpone it?
Is that what we need?
That's fine, yeah.
I'll do that again.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Is there any other business or informational purpose only or for upcoming agendas?
Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday night, August 8th, 7 PM. Again, at least one of the items will be the consideration of the petition for annexation that was discussed earlier tonight.
Anything else? Do a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank